You'd think the ultra-rich with their jets and VIP access would be immune to scams, but nope. Give them a fancy business card, a captivating backstory, and they'll practically throw their money at you. The wealthiest people on the planet are sometimes the easiest to fool. When you're used to getting special treatment, questioning things just isn't part of the lifestyle. From fake socialites who lived like royalty to master dupers who fooled the entire art world, history is full of con artists who didn't just steal money. They stole prestige, power, and trust from the wealthiest circles on the planet. Join us as we dive into the boldest, most shameless fraudsters who scammed the elite. Let's meet our first scammer, shall we? Anna Sorokin, the fake heiress who lived like a queen. Imagine rolling into the most exclusive hotels in New York, eating at the most expensive restaurants and rubbing soldiers with the city elite, all while being broke. Well, that's what Anna Sorokin, aka Anna Delvey, pulled off. Her story was superb. She was pretending to be a German heiress with a trust fund, and just like that, she convinced New York's high society that she was one of them. Without paying for any of the five-star hotels she stayed in, Sorokin sneaked into luxury events. It got to the point where her wealthy friends would cover her extravagant bills, always promising that money was on the way. Spoiler, it never was. Her crowning achievement was the sheer audacity to try and secure a $22 million loan to open an exclusive arts club. Anna used completely fake financial records and nearly got away with it as rich investors were hooked to her idea. Unfortunately for Anna, she was arrested in 2017 after the banks dug deeper and the whole thing collapsed. By that time, the fake heiress had scammed the elite out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. With such a story, it was hardly a surprise that even Netflix came knocking and created a whole series out of Anna's scamming streak. For what it's worth, Anna maintains she didn't do anything wrong. The commitment to the bit is commendable, to say the least. Up next, Victor Lustig, the man who sold the Eiffel Tower. Selling a fake designer bag is impressive, no doubt. But how about you take a leaf out of Victor Lustig's book and sell an entire national monument? This is the story of the con artist who sold the Eiffel Tower. Not once, but twice. Because the lie was just so absurd, it was believable. Way back in 1925, Lustig, pretending to be a government official, talked his way into a group of scrap metal dealers. His story was outrageous but strangely impressive, perhaps because of just how absurd it was. He told them the Eiffel Tower had become too expensive to maintain and needed to be dismantled. The dealers saw an opportunity and took the bait, only for Lustig to hold a secret bidding war. Well, if you're going in, you might as well take as much as you can. After pocketing some serious fortune, Lustig disappeared before anyone realized what had happened. Most people would probably call it a day after pulling off such a legendary fraud, but not Lustig. He had to do it all over again a few years later. But before he could make some money off it, the second group got suspicious and Victor had to flee. Eventually, though, Lustig's lucky streak came to an end. He got caught, but it wasn't for selling the Eiffel Tower. He'd been caught for running one of the most elaborate counterfeiting operations in US history. Talk about a man of many talents. Moving on to Frank Abagnale, the real-life Catch Me If You Can. Yeah, people, Leonardo DiCaprio's portrayal of Frank Abagnale was actually based on a true story. Abagnale was the ultimate con artist. Before he was legally allowed to drink, Abagnale had impersonated a doctor, a lawyer, and even a Pan Am pilot, flying around the world for free. And how did he do all that? Well, his forte was forging paychecks. This was before the digital revolution took over, so Abagnale managed to get away easily. He was so good at what he did that he had the FBI chasing shadows. Yeah, Tom Hanks captured the desperation well in the film. There really were agents who kept hitting dead end after dead end chasing Frank. Once Abagnale learned the art of forging paychecks, it dawned on him that he could do the same for airline IDs. And with that, he traveled the world until he was finally caught in France. But his story didn't end there. After serving around 5 years in prison, Abagnale was approached by the US government. They knew Abagnale's talents shouldn't go to waste and offered him a job to catch other fraudsters. Just like that, Abagnale became one of the very few people to turn their crime into a career. Followed by Elizabeth Holmes, the billion-dollar blood fraud. Once hailed as the next Steve Jobs, Elizabeth Holmes had it all: a futuristic vision, deep voice, and even the black turtlenecks. Unfortunately, her vision was based on lies. Holmes founded a startup, Theranos, which promised revolutionary blood testing to detect diseases with just a few drops of blood. She had a way with words, so charming investors and politicians wasn't a problem. Within a short time, Elizabeth got the wealthiest and smartest people in Silicon Valley to invest billions. The problem? The tech never worked. For years, she'd fake test results, silence whistleblowers, and lie about partnerships. It got to the point where she'd built a $9 billion empire on nothing but fiction. But then the scam got too big to contain. Investigative journalists and other whistleblowers exposed the truth about her faulty technology. This triggered a proper investigation, and in 2022, Elizabeth was convicted of fraud and sentenced to 11 years in prison. The moral? A black turtleneck doesn't make you a genius, but it could turn you into a billionaire if you know how. Finally, the king of Ponzi schemes, Bernie Madoff. For what it's worth, the final slot could have been taken by either Charles Ponzi or Bernie Madoff. Charles was the OG scam king whose name actually lives on for the fraud he pulled, but Bernie's the one who took Ponzi schemes to the next level. The idea was simple and repeatable, which is why it was so successful. Bernie Madoff had a string of wealthy clients who he'd promised guaranteed returns. In reality, though, he was only using the new investors to pay off old ones. It was all smoke and mirrors, while Madoff managed to steal $65 billion from his investors over decades. This became the biggest Ponzi scheme in history, and only something once in a lifetime could have disrupted Madoff's plan. Yeah, you see, it was the financial crisis of 2008 which ended up exposing Madoff's entire operation. Too many of his investors demanded their money back at once because the entire stock market had collapsed and everyone feared for their financial stability. So, with no new cash coming in, Madoff had nowhere to turn. So, he was sentenced to 150 years in prison. But hey, with his track record, who's to say he didn't start another Ponzi scheme behind bars? And there you have it, 5 legendary con artists who prove that all you need is confidence, a good story, and a complete lack of morals to scam the richest. Which one shocked you the most?